So, you want to own a senior living facility. Build a beautiful community with a grand entrance, a dining room, a courtyard, and 100 private apartments. Charge $6,000 or $7,000 a month. Keep 90 rooms occupied. That is more than $7 million a year flowing through one building. The population is getting older. Families are searching for care. Occupancy across major senior housing markets has climbed back toward 90%. It sounds like one of the safest real estate businesses imaginable. People will always age. The apartments are rented every month, and unlike a normal tenant, a resident is not likely to leave because another building offered a free month and a rooftop pool. That is the picture. Here is the problem. A senior living facility is not an apartment building with a nurse near the elevator. It is a 24-hour care operation attached to very expensive real estate. The resident does not simply occupy a room. They eat 3 meals a day. They need medication reminders. They need help bathing, dressing, walking, transferring, or using the bathroom. They may call for assistance at 2 in the morning. And as residents stay longer, many become more expensive to serve. The rent does not automatically rise every time someone needs another 15 minutes of care. That creates the central contradiction of senior living. The building becomes more profitable as occupancy rises. The operation becomes more difficult as care needs rise. A full facility can make millions. It can also lose money while every room looks occupied, every dining table looks busy, and every family wonders how the monthly bill became so high. Because the real product is not the apartment. It is the promise that somebody will answer when the resident presses the button. The building is the shell. The business is the night shift. So let us build a senior living community from the ground up and watch the money move, not the brochure, the operating model behind it. Before buying land, you need to decide what kind of senior living business you are opening. Senior living is one label covering several different businesses. Independent living is closest to hospitality and apartments. Residents are generally more independent. The community may provide meals, transportation, activities, housekeeping, and social life, but less hands-on care. Assisted living adds help with daily activities such as bathing, dressing, medication management, and mobility. Memory care serves residents with dementia in a more secure environment, usually with higher staffing needs, specialized programming, and additional safety systems. Skilled nursing is another business entirely. It provides more intensive medical and nursing care, operates under a different regulatory structure, and relies much more heavily on Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement. For this video, we are building a private pay community with assisted living and memory care. That is the model many people picture when they hear senior living. It is also the model where the business looks most like real estate from the outside and most like healthcare once the doors close. Now you need a site. Families usually choose a community close to the adult child, not close to the resident's childhood home 3 states away. That means the facility needs access to population, hospitals, physicians, shopping, and family members who can visit without planning an expedition. The surrounding area also needs enough older households with the financial resources to pay. This is not a small detail. The national median assisted living price reached about $6,200 per month in 2025. Most assisted living residents pay privately for room, board, and services. Medicare does not normally pay the assisted living bill. Medicaid may cover certain personal care services for eligible residents in some states, but it generally does not pay the room and board portion. That means demand is not simply the number of older adults nearby. It is the number of older adults who need care, can afford the community, have family support, and are ready to move at the same time. A county can have thousands of seniors and still be a weak market if most cannot pay your rate. A wealthy market can still be weak if families strongly prefer home care. Demographics create opportunity. They do not fill rooms by themselves. Once you find the land, the building starts consuming money long before the first resident arrives. A senior living community needs accessible rooms, commercial kitchens, dining areas, elevators, fire suppression, emergency systems, nurse call technology, medication storage, commercial laundry, backup power, offices, activity space, parking, and areas designed for residents who may use walkers or wheelchairs. Memory care may need secured doors, enclosed outdoor areas, controlled elevators, specialized layouts, and systems that reduce wandering risk without making the building feel like a locked institution. Then comes zoning, state licensing, building inspections, fire approval, background checks, policies, training requirements, and documentation. Assisted living is regulated primarily at the state level, so the exact rules vary, but the economic problem is consistent. You can spend years developing a building that is legally allowed to house exactly 0 paying residents until the final approvals arrive. Industry research has estimated that the average senior housing construction cycle has stretched to roughly 29 months. During that time, Architects, contractors, lenders, consultants, lawyers, and the land itself are all charging you. The residents, once again, are the only people not sending an invoice. Suppose the completed community has 100 units, 70 are assisted living, 30 are memory care. The project cost, acquisition price, or replacement cost will vary enormously by market and quality, so we will not pretend there is one national number. But whether you build it or buy it, you are likely dealing with tens of millions of dollars tied to one property. That makes the financing structure almost as important as the care model. A weak operation with manageable debt can survive long enough to improve. A good operation with impossible debt can fail while the lobby still smells new. Now the doors open. This is where many new owners make their first mistake. They think the building is finished. Financially, it has just started burning cash. A new community rarely opens at full occupancy. You begin with an executive director, nurses, caregivers, kitchen staff, housekeeping, maintenance, salespeople, activities staff, insurance, utilities, software, and debt payments. Then the first resident moves in. One customer is paying. The building is staffed for many more. That is the lease-up period. At 10% occupancy, the dining room still needs cooks. At 20%, somebody still has to cover the overnight shift. At 40%, the elevator, fire system, insurance, and debt do not become 40% cheaper. Senior living has high fixed costs. That is why occupancy matters so much. Brookdale, one of the largest senior living operators in the United States, has described the model directly. Once occupancy moves above roughly 80%, the fixed cost leverage becomes much more powerful, and each additional move-in can contribute far more to operating income. But reaching 80% is not the same as reaching safety. Let us run an illustrative community. 100 units, 90 occupied. Assume the average occupied unit produces $7,250 each month after combining base rent, care charges, and the higher pricing of memory care. That produces about $7.8 million in annual resident revenue. It sounds fantastic. Then payroll arrives. Caregivers, medication technicians, nurses, dining staff, housekeepers, maintenance, activities, transportation, sales, administration, the executive director. A public operator's assisted living and memory care segment spent nearly 47 cents of every revenue dollar on community labor during the first quarter of 2026. That was before food, utilities, insurance, maintenance, marketing, property costs, or debt. Use $3.6 million for labor in our example. Food and dining supplies take another $650,000. Utilities, housekeeping supplies, laundry, and resident supplies take $600,000. Insurance, software, licensing, administration, sales, and marketing take $800,000. Maintenance, repairs, property taxes, transportation, and other operating costs take another $650,000. The community now has about $1.5 million left at the property level. That is before debt service, before replacing the roof, before renovating old rooms, before income taxes, before depreciation, and before the owner decides their time should be worth something. If the property carries $18 million of debt at 7% over 25 years, annual principal and interest are roughly $1.5 million. The facility collected almost $8 million. The owner may have almost nothing left. That does not mean every senior living facility has those numbers. It means revenue can be enormous while the margin remains highly sensitive to occupancy, labor, and financing. The first hidden lever is staffing. A senior living community never closes. A daycare closes at night. A restaurant locks the kitchen. A gym may operate with one person at the desk. Senior living still needs coverage at 2 a.m. on Sunday, Christmas morning, and during the snowstorm that convinced half the staff to call out. One position staffed around the clock requires 168 hours every week. That is more than 4 full-time 40-hour employees before vacations, training, sick days, and turnover. So one caregiver station is not one employee. It is a small department. Now multiply that across floors, care neighborhoods, nursing coverage, medication passes, dining, housekeeping, and memory care. The schedule becomes the economic engine. Every open shift has to be filled. Regular staff may work overtime. Managers may cover the floor. The facility may use temporary agency labor at a much higher hourly cost. Or the shift remains thin, increasing stress and risk. This is why a single resignation can become a financial event. A caregiver does not simply remove 40 hours of labor. They create 40 hours that somebody else must cover immediately. The residents still need help getting out of bed Monday morning. The business cannot place a sign on the door saying service is delayed because the team is hiring. And low wages do not make the labor cheap. Nursing assistants had a national median annual wage of about $39,500 in 2024. Home health and personal care aides had a median around $34,900. Those are not large salaries. But a community needs many of these workers across every hour of the week. Add payroll taxes, benefits, workers' compensation, recruiting, training, overtime, and coverage. The resident may pay more than $70,000 a year. The caregiver may still feel underpaid. The owner may still struggle with margin. Just like daycare, all three things can be true because the product consumes human attention. But senior living has an extra complication. The amount of attention changes after the customer moves in. A resident may arrive needing reminders and help with medication. 6 months later, they may need assistance dressing, then help showering, then help transferring from bed, then help at night. The room has not changed. The amount of labor inside it has. Communities often use care levels or service packages to charge for those additional needs. That makes sense economically. It can still feel brutal to the family. The family thought the monthly rate was $6,000. Then care needs increased. The new assessment adds $800, then another $1,000. Then incontinence supplies, medication management, escort services, or two-person transfer assistance add more. The family feels like the price keeps moving. The operator feels like the care minutes keep moving. This is the second major reveal. The unit is not the true inventory. Staff time is. The apartment limits how many residents you can house. Staff time limits how much care you can deliver safely. A building can have 10 empty rooms and no room for another high-acuity resident because the current schedule cannot support them. Or it can be physically full and financially weak because too many residents receive more care than their pricing covers. That is acuity creep. The residents age in place. The operation slowly becomes more labor-intensive. If the community reassesses too slowly, revenue falls behind care. If it reassesses too aggressively, families feel exploited and may leave. The facility has to price care accurately while handling one of the most emotional financial conversations a family will ever have. That is not a normal rent increase. It is a conversation about what mom can no longer do alone. If you like seeing where ordinary businesses hide their real economics, subscribe. This channel is about the numbers underneath the brochure. Now we reach occupancy. Senior housing occupancy across major markets approached 90% by 2026, while new construction slowed. That sounds like automatic profit. It is not. Occupancy is the headline. Resident mix is the business. Imagine the community is at 90% occupancy. 10 rooms remain empty. A new resident moves into an assisted living unit at $7,000 per month. Much of that revenue may flow through because the building already has a kitchen, management team, and overnight staff. Now imagine the next resident needs frequent two-person transfers, extensive medication support, and repeated nighttime assistance. That resident may require more staffing on a specific shift. The 91st customer can be the most profitable person in the building, or the person who forces you to add another caregiver every night. Revenue rises one resident at a time. Labor sometimes rises one entire shift at a time. That is the senior living version of a staffing cliff. This is also why memory care usually charges more. The secured space is only part of the premium. Residents may need closer supervision, more redirection, help with nearly every daily activity, specialized activities, and staff trained to respond to behaviors associated with dementia. A memory care unit can produce more revenue per occupied room. It can also become a much more demanding operation. Higher price does not automatically mean higher profit. The margin depends on whether the care model, staffing, building design, and resident needs match. Then there is turnover. In an apartment building, a good tenant might stay for years. In assisted living, residents leave because their health changes. Some return home, some move closer to family. Some require skilled nursing. Some enter the hospital and never return. Some die. The owner cannot prevent most of those move-outs. That makes sales a permanent operating function. A community at 90% occupancy with 100 rooms has 10 vacancies. If 5 residents leave in 1 month, occupancy falls to 85% before the sales team has done anything wrong. The payroll does not fall 5% the next morning. Neither does the mortgage. The empty room also needs cleaning, repairs, carpet, paint, and sometimes a full renovation before the next move-in. Then comes the sales funnel. Families usually begin searching during a crisis, a fall, a hospital admission, a spouse who can no longer manage care, a daughter who discovers that her father has been eating crackers for dinner and taking Tuesday's pills on Friday. The family calls several communities. They tour quickly. They compare prices they do not fully understand. They feel guilty. They argue about location. The resident may refuse to move. Then the hospital discharge date arrives and turns the entire decision into a 48-hour emergency. The senior living sales director is not selling granite countertops. They are guiding a family through fear, guilt, urgency, and a complicated care decision. That is why reputation is so valuable. Hospital case managers, physicians, home care agencies, elder law attorneys, residents' families, and local professionals can all influence referrals. A glossy advertisement may generate a tour. Trust generates a move-in. And one serious incident can damage that trust. A fall with delayed response. A medication error. A resident wandering outside. A family saying nobody returned the call. A dining room that smells wrong during a tour. These are not only care failures, they are financial events. Online reviews turn negative. Referral sources become cautious. Tours decline. Occupancy falls months after the original problem. The fixed costs remain. Management cuts overtime. Staff become thinner. Service worsens. More employees leave. More families complain. That is the senior living death spiral. The building may still be beautiful. The math underneath it is decomposing. Real estate creates another trap. Some operators own the building. Some lease it from a real estate investment trust or another landlord. Some manage communities for a fee while another investor owns the property. These are three different businesses. The property owner wants dependable rent and rising real estate value. The operator needs enough cash after labor and other expenses to pay that rent. The manager earns fees, but may not receive all the upside from improving the building. When one company owns both the real estate and operation, it keeps more of the benefit when performance improves. It also carries more debt and capital risk. When the operator leases, the rent usually does not disappear because occupancy fell. A lease turns the building into a fixed claim on an unpredictable care business. That can work when rates and occupancy rise. It becomes painful when labor spikes or rooms empty. The facility can be operationally decent and financially broken because too much of the cash flow was promised to the landlord or lender before the residents arrived. Now compare two communities. The first opens with expensive debt and weak reserves. Management underprices care to fill rooms quickly. The occupancy report looks good, but residents become more dependent. Staffing hours rise. The facility delays reassessments because families resist price increases. Two experienced caregivers quit. Agency labor fills the schedule. A medication error leads to a bad review. Referrals slow. 5 residents move out. The owner cuts labor to protect cash. Service gets worse. The building is 85% occupied. Millions of dollars still enter every year, and the business is moving toward failure. The second community opens with enough working capital to survive lease-up. It hires an experienced executive director. It prices care transparently. It reassesses residents consistently. It keeps enough staffing flexibility for call-outs and higher acuity residents. It tracks occupancy by unit type, referral source, and care level. It maintains relationships with hospitals and families. It invests in supervisors who make frontline employees less likely to leave. It renovates rooms quickly after move-outs. It knows that one additional occupied unit has enormous value, but it does not accept a resident whose needs the building cannot safely meet. That last decision is difficult. Turning away revenue feels wrong when a room is empty. Accepting a resident you cannot serve is more expensive. The strong community understands what it is selling. Not housing, not meals, not activities. Reliability. The resident needs to believe help will come. The family needs to believe the phone will be answered. The hospital needs to believe the community can safely manage the discharge. The employee needs to believe enough coworkers will arrive for the next shift. Everyone is buying a different version of the same promise. So, can owning a senior living facility make you rich? Yes. Demand is growing. The population is aging. Supply growth has slowed. A well-located community with strong occupancy, accurate care pricing, stable staff, manageable debt, and a good reputation can produce substantial cash flow and valuable real estate. Once fixed costs are covered, additional move-ins can create powerful operating leverage. Multiple communities can share recruiting, purchasing, training, administration, technology, and sales systems. The best operators can build durable companies, but it is not passive income. It is not simply a bet that older people need apartments. It is a hotel, restaurant, transportation company, housekeeping service, sales organization, regulated care provider, medication operation, and 24-hour staffing puzzle inside one building. The resident is not paying $6,000 for a room. They are paying for the dining room to open, for the medication to arrive, for the bathroom floor to be dry, for someone to notice that they did not come to breakfast, for a caregiver to answer at 2 in the morning. The apartment creates capacity. The staff creates the product. The reputation fills the apartment. and the financing decides whether any profit survives. That is the hidden economics of senior living. The building may be worth millions, but the most valuable part of the business is the person who walks into a dark hallway at 2:17 in the morning because somebody pressed the button. The building is the shell. The business is the night shift.